The church bells were still ringing when my phone vibrated in my pocket. My wife's photo sat at the front of the aisle. White flowers, closed casket, people crying in the pews. I shouldn't have answered. Not that day. Not during her funeral. But the name on the screen, her boss, wouldn't stop calling. I stepped outside into the cold November air, put the phone to my ear, and heard his voice shaking. "Mr. Bennett, you need to see this. Right now. Before we say anything to the police." The line went quiet. My heart didn't. "My name is Martin Bennett. I'm 62 years old. On the day I buried my wife, her boss showed me something that made me question how she really died and who she really worked for. Grief makes time strange. You move through it like thick water, slow, heavy, everything muffled. That morning, I went through the motions. Black suit, straight tie, shake hands, accept hugs. My wife, Laura, had always been the one who organized things, birthdays, vacations, even wills and documents. When she died in what they called a single-car accident on a rainy Tuesday, I discovered how much of our life she quietly held together. She left for work that morning with a kiss on my cheek and a travel mug of coffee in her hand. "I'll be late," she'd said. "Big meeting, don't wait up." She never came home. At the funeral, I sat in the front row, hands clasped so tight my knuckles turned white, listening to the pastor talk about faith and peace and God's plan. None of it made sense. Laura was 59, healthy, sharp, careful driver. I kept seeing her car in my mind, crumpled against the guardrail, airbags deployed, rain streaking the windshield. They said she must have hydroplaned. They said it was quick. They said she didn't suffer. People say a lot of things when they don't know what else to say. The first time my phone buzzed in my pocket, I ignored it. The second time, I shifted in my seat. The third time, I slipped it out, glanced at the screen, and felt my jaw tighten. Call from Greg Holland, Laura's boss at the biotech company. She'd worked under him for 6 years, director of clinical compliance. That was the title printed on the card she kept in her wallet. The pastor's voice echoed through the church. "We gather to celebrate the life of Laura Bennett." The phone buzzed again. Same name, same insistence. Greg knew where I was. He'd sent flowers, signed the card. If he was calling now, during the service, it had to be something urgent. I looked at the casket, at the photo beside it, Laura laughing in our backyard, sunlight in her hair, wine glass in hand. Then I stood up quietly and slipped out the side door. Cold air hit my face like a slap. I took a breath that hurt and answered. "Greg?" His voice was low, tight, frayed at the edges. "Martin, I'm so sorry to bother you today." "Then why are you?" I asked. My tone came out sharper than I intended. "I wouldn't call if it could wait," he said. "There's something you need to see, something about Laura, about the last week at the office." I leaned against the brick wall like my legs might give out. "What are you talking about?" "We found a file," he said. "In her desk, locked drawer, password-protected drive taped underneath." I swallowed. Laura never mentioned anything like that. He continued, words rushing now. "She'd labeled it, 'If something happens to me.'" The world narrowed to that one sentence. "If something happens to me." Rain, accident, guardrail, late-night meeting. What if it wasn't random? "Martin," he said, "I know this is the worst possible time, but I think your wife was scared, and I think someone at our company might have had a reason to silence her." I stared at the parking lot, at the neat rows of cars, at the hearse parked near the curb. Inside, church bells rang softly as the choir began to sing. "You're saying her death wasn't an accident?" I muttered. "I'm saying I don't know," Greg replied, "but I just watched the video on that drive, and I can't sit on it alone." "Video?" "Yes, security footage, emails, a recorded meeting." He exhaled shakily. "Martin, Laura was investigating something, and she recorded herself confronting the people involved." My heart thudded against my ribs. "How long have you known?" I asked. "I found it this morning," he said. "I called you the second I realized what it might mean." I looked back at the church doors, family inside, friends, a service I was supposed to be leading as her husband. "I can't just walk out on my wife's funeral," I whispered. "I know," he said. "I'm outside too. The company sent me as a representative. I'm parked across the street in a gray sedan." I turned, scanning the road. There he was, sitting behind the wheel, face pale through the windshield. He raised a hand, a small, hesitant wave. I walked toward the car, each step feeling like a betrayal and a duty at the same time. He rolled down the window. Martin, Greg. Up close, he looked older than I expected, deep lines around his mouth, eyes red-rimmed. He reached over and opened the passenger door. Please, just 5 minutes. If I sit with this alone any longer, I'll lose my mind. I hesitated. Then I got in. The interior smelled faintly of coffee and stress. Greg pulled a small external drive from his pocket, black, unmarked. This was taped under the bottom of her drawer, he said. Not where anyone would casually find it. He plugged it into his laptop, which sat open on the console. The screen lit up with a folder. For Martin, if I can't tell you myself. My stomach dropped. She named me? He nodded. These are her exact words. She wanted you to see this. My hands were shaking now. Play it, I said. He clicked on a video file. Laura appeared on screen, sitting at her desk in the office I'd only seen once at a holiday party. Her hair pulled back, eyes hard in a way I didn't recognize. Date, November 3rd, she said into the camera. If you're watching this, something went wrong. Greg paused the video. Martin, he said softly. I think your wife knew someone might come after her. I stared at the frozen frame of her face. Strong, determined, scared. Inside the church, someone was probably looking for me, wondering where the grieving husband had gone. Out here, I was about to find out why my wife had been preparing for her own death. Don't stop it now, I whispered. Let it play. He hit the spacebar. On the screen, Laura took a breath and spoke words that would rip my life open and never let it close again. I work for Horizon Biotherapeutics, she began, and we're lying to patients. The video continued. My world tilted, and I knew, sitting in that car outside her funeral, that burying my wife was only the beginning. The video kept playing, and every second felt like a stone dropping into my chest. Laura sat rigidly at her desk, the blinds behind her half closed, creating stripes of shadow across her face. She looked tired, but not physically. Tired the way someone looks after carrying a secret too heavy for too long. Horizon is falsifying trial results, she said, voice low but steady. We're approving a drug that isn't safe. Greg inhaled sharply beside me. Laura continued. They pressured me to sign off on the final report. I refused. Since then, I've noticed things. People watching, files disappearing, conversations stopping when I walk in. My throat tightened. She looked straight into the camera, straight at me. Martin, if anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Greg paused the video without asking. I stared at the frozen frame, my wife's eyes full of quiet fear. My hands trembled, betrayal, anger, confusion, all crashing at once. Why didn't she tell me? I whispered. Greg swallowed. She didn't tell anyone, not HR, not legal, not her team. She only spoke to 2 people, me and you, through this. I turned my gaze slowly toward him. And what did you do, Greg? He stiffened. I told her I'd escalated. She told me not to. Why? Because, he said, voice cracking, Horizon just merged with a larger parent company. The people she'll be reporting. Those are the same ones she suspected were hiding the results. I pressed my fingers into my temples. Let me get this straight, I said. Laura discovered the drug was dangerous, refused to sign off, and the people she reported to were the same people she thought were involved? He nodded. And then she dies in a car accident. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Greg closed the laptop slowly, like the weight of its contents had doubled. There's more, he said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a manila envelope. What's in that? I asked. Printouts from her email, he said softly. Ones I found in her locked drawer. He handed it to me. My fingers hesitated on the flap before pulling it open. Inside were a dozen pages, notations, timestamps, subject lines. One stood out immediately. Internal safety issue, urgent. Addressed to laura.bennetthorizonbio.com cc. regulatoryhorizonbio.com. Laura's personal email. ECCCN blanked out intentionally. Laura had printed the thread and circled a line near the bottom. I read it aloud. Let's discuss in person. No more email. Greg nodded grimly. That email was from one of the VPs, the same VP who handled the final regulatory submissions. And who was BCC'd? I asked. We don't know, Greg said. But based on the system logs, the message was forwarded outside the company. My stomach sank. You think the VP told someone else about her? I asked. Greg didn't answer. He didn't have to. I pressed the stack of papers back into the envelope, my hands stiff. I'm taking this to the police, I said. Greg's reaction was immediate, sharp, panicked. No. Martin, listen to me. If you hand this over right now, they'll bury it. Why? He leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper despite the empty car. Because Horizon funds the city's medical grants. Half the department budgets depend on them. They'll sweep this away until the merger is finished. You're telling me the police won't touch evidence of fraud and murder? I'm telling you, he said gravely, that until we have everything, showing them this puts you in danger. The air felt colder suddenly. I'm a grieving husband, I said. Who would target me? Greg hesitated. Martin, you don't know these people. They're wealthy, connected, ruthless, and they already know Laura didn't go quietly. My blood chilled. What do you mean? He looked away for a moment before answering. A week before her accident, Laura came into my office shaking. She said someone had been calling her from blocked numbers. I felt my chest tighten. She thought it was someone inside the company, he continued, warning her or threatening her. She wasn't sure. Why didn't she come home and tell me? I whispered. Greg answered with painful honesty. She was protecting you. Silence settled between us, thick, heavy, suffocating. I opened the laptop again. Play the rest, I said. He pressed play. Laura looked at the camera, eyes raw but determined. I'm saving everything I have. I don't know who to trust. If you're watching this, Martin, I'm sorry. I didn't want to scare you, but I couldn't stay quiet. Her voice faltered. I love you, but I had to do what's right. The video ended. I sat back, completely hollowed out. A moment passed. Then Greg spoke softly. I want to help you, Martin, but we need to be careful. How? I asked. He reached into the center console and pulled out a key card. This is her office access card. I took it before they cleared her things. You stole it? I asked. It wasn't going to stay in her desk, he said. They would have wiped everything. I figured she left us breadcrumbs. I held the card between my fingers, plastic, smooth, deceptively ordinary. What do you want me to do? I asked. Greg looked me dead in the eye. We go to Horizon tonight, after hours, and we find whatever she hid. I froze. That's illegal, I said. So is everything they're doing, he replied quietly, and they killed her to keep it hidden. My heart hammered against my ribs. And if they're watching us? I asked. He glanced at the rearview mirror. I think they already are. I turned slowly. A dark sedan sat across the street, engine running, lights off. My skin prickled. Is that? I began. Greg's voice was barely a whisper. They've been following me since this morning. My pulse spiked. Martin, he said, eyes locked on mine. If you walk away now, you can go back to your life. But if you stay, we uncover what your wife died for. My breath caught. My wife, Laura, her fear, her courage, her warnings. This was no accident, and whoever caused it wasn't finished. I closed my fist around the key card. I'm not walking away. Greg nodded once. Then tonight, we break into Horizon Biotherapeutics. Night swallowed the city long before we reached Horizon's headquarters. The building rose out of the darkness like a black steel monolith. 5 floors of glass, labs, and secrets my wife died trying to expose. I gripped Laura's access card in my hand until the edges dug into my fingers. Greg parked 2 blocks away, under a flickering street lamp. We go in through the employee entrance, he said. No cameras on the stairwell until the 2nd floor. You sound like you've done this before, I muttered. He didn't answer. We walked fast, heads down, hands in our pockets. Every car that passed felt like a threat. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. When we reached the back door of the building, Greg paused and checked his phone. No alarm scheduled, he whispered. They won't expect anyone tonight. They think the investigation report is buried. But Laura didn't bury it, I said. His jaw tightened. No, she didn't. He slid the keycard into the reader. A green light blinked. The door clicked open. We slipped inside. The building felt cold, unnaturally cold. Lights off, floor empty, air too still. I followed Greg through the stairwell, each step echoing like a warning. Second floor, research wing. Greg stopped outside a glass-walled office with Laura's name still faintly visible where they'd peeled her plaque off. "This is hers," he whispered, but he didn't open the door. I did. The smell hit me first, sterile chemicals and old paper. Her chair still tucked neatly under the desk. A mug with her lipstick still on the rim. A cardigan she kept draped on the back of the seat. For a moment, I couldn't move. "This is where she spent her last week," Greg said gently. She was terrified. I forced myself forward. "What did she hide?" I asked. Greg pointed to the underside of her desk. "Look there." I ducked down. There was a panel, tiny, metal, almost invisible. I slid my fingernail under the edge and popped it open. Inside was a small black notebook. Not legal notes, not lab data. A diary. My wife's handwriting, tight, controlled, hurried. The first page read, "If they're reading this, I'm already in danger." My stomach dropped. "I had no idea she kept this," I whispered. "Read it," Greg urged. I flipped through the pages, meetings, names, dates, threats, warnings. Then, a line circled 3 times. Project Meridian, not for human trials. I narrowed my eyes. "What's Project Meridian?" Greg's face drained of color. "Oh God," he whispered. "They said that project was canceled, years ago." "What was it?" I pressed. He hesitated. "It was a neurological treatment, an experimental compound. Early trials caused violent seizures. Internal review shut it down. But someone revived it," I said, "and Laura found out." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Martin, Meridian wasn't just dangerous, it was illegal. The FDA never approved human testing." The notebook suddenly felt heavier in my hand. "We need to find the digital files," I said. "That's the server room," Greg replied, pointing toward a locked door at the end of the hall. "No cameras inside, but there's one in the hallway. We need to move fast." We hurried toward it, staying close to the wall. Greg fished out a second key card, his own, and swiped it. The lock clicked. Inside, the air buzzed with the low hum of servers. Machines stacked floor to ceiling, lights blinking like tiny red eyes. He rushed to a terminal and began typing. "We need her folder," he muttered. "She must have backed everything up here." I stood guard at the door, heart pounding. "Got it," he whispered. A file popped open on the screen. Meridian, trial, results, Fin 12. Internal incident report, L. Bennett, patient, fatality, redacted. My pulse spiked. "What is that?" I asked. Greg clicked the third file. A document opened. At the top, confidential, do not distribute. Then a line. Subject died following unapproved dosage escalation. Report altered per instruction. My breath hitched. "Someone died?" I whispered. Greg nodded bleakly. "And Horizon covered it up." I clenched my fists. "They killed someone, then threatened my wife to stay silent." "And she refused," Greg said. Before he could continue, a loud metallic click echoed through the hallway outside. I froze. "What was that?" I whispered. Greg's eyes widened. "That sounded like—" Another click, a door shutting. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Greg shut the laptop and pulled the USB drive from the port. "Someone's here," he whispered. He shoved the drive into my hand. "Martin, take this. If they catch us, you run. Do you hear me? Run." "No," I hissed. "I'm not leaving you." The footsteps stopped outside the room. A shadow appeared under the door. Then a voice. Cold, male, familiar. "Greg, I know you're in there." Greg's blood drained from his face. "No," he whispered. "Who is it?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "The VP, the one Laura reported." The door handle turned slowly. Greg backed away. "Martin, hide." The door swung open, and the man stepped inside, wearing a calm smile that chilled my blood. "Well," he said softly, shutting the door behind him. "Looks like Laura's little investigation didn't die with her after all." And the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room the moment the door shut. A thick, suffocating darkness broken only by the faint hum of servers and the VP's quiet footsteps approaching. Greg's breathing hitched while I pressed myself behind a tall server tower, holding my breath. Greg, the VP said softly, you should have known better. His voice was calm, too calm. I told Laura the same thing before she died. My blood turned to ice. He walked deeper into the room, one slow step at a time. You think I didn't notice the missing access logs, the files she backed up, the little visit you took to her office today? He chuckled. You two never were subtle. Greg tried to sound steady, but his voice trembled. She had evidence. You can't hide this forever. The VP sighed as if he pitied him. Greg, this company is about to go public, billions at stake. Do you really think we'd let a compliance manager ruin that? Every word felt like a knife twisting deeper. He continued. Laura was warned multiple times. She kept digging, kept asking questions, kept recording things she shouldn't. He paused. So yes, Greg, she had to be removed. Greg's breath caught. So it was you, he whispered. It was necessary, the VP replied. She drove off the road at just the right moment. Unfortunate, but effective. Cold rage erupted inside me. My wife, her last moments weren't an accident. They were arranged. The VP stepped closer to Greg. And now you're following her path. Shame. My grip tightened on the USB drive in my hand. Footsteps stopped. A metallic click echoed. A gun cocking. Turn around, he ordered. Greg's voice broke. Please? You don't have to do this. Oh, I do, he said, icy calm. I can't have you talking to the board. Not today, not before the merger. He raised the gun. Greg squeezed his eyes shut. I stepped out from behind the server. Put it down. The VP jerked, startled. He turned toward me, eyes narrowing. Well, he said slowly, the grieving husband joins us. He lifted the gun toward me. You weren't supposed to be a problem, Martin, but grief makes people curious, doesn't it? And now you're holding something that belongs to me. His gaze dropped to the USB in my hand. The drive, give it to me, and maybe I'll make this painless. My heartbeat hammered in my throat. You murdered my wife, I said quietly. No negotiation. He shrugged. She was going to ruin everything. You would have done the same. No, I said, and that's why you'll never understand people like her. He laughed, then stepped forward. Give me the drive. He aimed directly at my chest. Greg was frozen, hands raised. Then I remembered Laura's access card in my pocket. I slid my fingers toward it. The VP didn't notice. Now, he repeated. I lifted the USB slowly, then flicked the access card across the room. It struck the emergency kill switch. Every server shut down at once. Explosions of sparks, alarms, a crackling roar. The VP flinched, gun jerking upward. I lunged, the gun fired, the bullet tearing into a server inches from my head. Greg shouted. The room plunged into flickering red backup lights. I grabbed the VP's wrist, slammed it against the metal rack. The gun clattered to the floor. He lunged, but Greg kicked it away. The VP swung wildly at me. I ducked, grabbed his coat, and hurled him against the server stack. He hit hard and collapsed, gasping. Sirens blared. Security alarms shrieked. Red lights strobed across the VP's face. What now? Greg asked, breathless. The VP stared up at me, panic finally blooming. You don't understand. This company will bury you. You can't beat us. I held up the USB. I don't have to beat your company. I just have to expose you. He shook his head violently. No, you don't know what you're doing. The board, the investors, the government. You're dead, Bennett. You're dead. I crouched down to his level. No, I whispered. You are. Security burst through the door, but Greg held up his badge. Internal breach, he shouted. Call the authorities. This man tried to destroy evidence. The VP had no script, no lies, no power. His face went pale as two guards seized him. He thrashed, screaming, You think this changes anything? You think this brings her back? She was nothing. My fist connected with his jaw before I realized I'd moved. He went silent. Greg grabbed my arm. Martin, enough. I looked down at the man who killed my wife. This isn't for her boss, I whispered. This is for her. They dragged him away. When the room cleared, Greg placed a trembling hand on my shoulder. We did it, he said softly. I stared at the USB in my hand. No, I whispered. She did.